So, Mark, congratulations on the film and indeed on your performance. A really intense piece of acting. It must have been very intense for you as well.
It was, yeah. The subject matter and where that character's at in his mind, at that when we meet him in the film. I'd sort of say he's probably on the edge of a nervous breakdown and living at the bottom of a bottle and
he's not a very
fractured.
Happy guy, is he?
No.
As you say, I think fractured is the word. Now, this is actually your first lead role in a feature film.
Yeah.
So when the idea was suggested, what was your reaction to that?
Well, to be honest,
daunting?
Yeah, I mean, it was, yeah. I was actually sitting in my living room with a mate of mine and we were having a right old bitch and moan about how rubbish the industry can be and how unfair it is. And I said, I've just had this script through and it's the best script I've ever read, but it's written for like a 40-year-old bloke, a 50-year-old bloke. And so we were sort of having a couple of drinks and I said, let's do it now because I think it'd be right now to do it now. So I sent this tape in and I think I was really late into the process of it because I think they were in conversations with quite a few actors who had better credentials than me, a bit more bums on seats power. And I sent my tape in really late and luckily I think it clicked for Clio and she liked it. So she invited me in and I was given the opportunity of sort of showing her my idea of the character, which I sort of took into the room and said, this is how I see him. And I think it was just one of the moments where a director sees what she's been looking for, and luckily for me, it went my way. So yeah, from then you sort of spend the day on Hampstead Heath getting drunk and going with your hands up in the air, saying, thank God for that. I've done it, and ringing your mum, I've done it. And then the day after, you sort of shit yourself and realise that you've got this part to undertake,
and it's real
with Pete and sparring with someone like Ruth Wilson, who I've always respected, and she's not that vain actor. She's very much like she's an integral actor to this kind of industry, and you're going to be sparring with her. So I think it was the fear that probably got me through it. But
I'm curious that you said you thought the part was for a much older man.
I think it was written.
Why did you think that?
I think he went through a lot of stages of being a little bit older. I think he's Ruth's older brother by a couple of years. So that puts him at about 34, 36. But I think when I read the script, it was at a stage with Clio where it was about, I think he was about 50 in the version of the script. Maybe I'd read an old version. But yeah, he was older.
So what appealed to you about the character? I mean, he's a bit different to the one you were playing on TV in Love's Lies and Records.
Yeah.
For example.
Yeah, very different. I think that's the appeal for me. I think, anything which... He's such a big leap from where I am in terms of his optimism, where he is mentally, how unstable he can be, and, where he is in terms of his guilt-ridden, sort of impotent stage of not being able to express himself. The isolation that lives within this man was going to be a large leap in terms of his psychology, and mapping that psychology out and working out. Great thing about Clio is, like the piece of paper you're holding, if that's a line and that's a line, it's sort of the white in between where Clio's work lives. And you almost have to decode it and ask, why is he doing this? Why is he doing this? Why is he this way? And I found that fascinating. Fascinating.
And you talked about working with Ruth Wilson, who plays your sister. You don't actually have that much actual dialogue when you look at your scenes together, even though you spend a lot of time with each other on screen. How did you go about creating that relationship between the two of you?
I think we were lucky that we struck a rapport quite early. I think we can make each other laugh, which was, invaluable on a set like that. I think we struck it up quite early, but I think we were also beasts of a similar nature on the set. I think we knew, today on the schedule is going to be a lot of filming sheep in the background and a lot of sort of that kind of stuff, so we could have a laugh on those days, and then other days when we knew we'd have to be reaching sort of the emotional vulnerability of some of the scenes that Clio'd written. We'd know we were quite complicit with what we needed for what different days and what was applicable. I think we were quite similar in that respect.
Did you have to audition for the part, by the way?
Yeah, I sent a tape in, and then Clio got me in. I read with Clio and then read with Ruth that afternoon, and then I was invited back because I'd sort of gone in wearing the character. I think they were a bit worried that they were going to be stuck up north with an actual alcoholic, and authentic's one thing, but you know. So
you obviously got off to a really good start with Ruth at the audition. Something must have clicked then.
I think we did. I think we were. I think it was the script a bit. You know, there was a bit of a sing song to the script, and we could hear I think we were both singing the same tune when we sat down together, and there was something which we sort of clicked into each other a little bit.
It's great when that happens, actually, and you can't necessarily sort of define how it happens. It just does.
Yeah.
So, and your character actually is probably the most difficult one to like.
Yeah.
In the film, but you do feel a certain sympathy for him, and I wondered how you went about creating that bit of sympathy amongst the audience for him, because it's not easy.
No, I think it's the snowball of his past, which is, I know what you mean. He's a character that's got pathos. Like, you do feel for him, but you don't want to feel for him. To be honest with you, I think you say he's the least likeable, or I don't think he likes himself. I think that's probably where you find the sympathy for someone who beats themselves up that much. You know, I'd had to do some pretty awful things, and I think his worst crime is his own inadequacy that he finds in himself. He carries around this guilt. He's not someone that feels sorry for himself. He's someone that hates himself. Someone who allowed his sister to go through the things that she went through, and he never had the bottle courage or even, I suppose, insight to know that was a moment that he should step in and not cover it up. And so I think all of us can relate to that feeling of remorse and guilt and what could I have done better. And I think it's the level that he beats himself up about it.
He can't forgive himself, really.
Can't forgive himself. And I think that moment at the end of the film is, he may be one rung on the ladder, but I don't think he's by any stretch paid his debt back. You
mentioned the sheep earlier, and you probably don't have quite as much to do with the animals as Ruth does, but you do actually have quite a bit to do with the sheep. I mean, there's one scene where you've got one tucked underneath each arm. What were they like to work with? Difficult?
Yeah, the temperamental, stubborn animals. I got to know them really well. I mean, the best thing, I'd gone up, you know, Clio had said, what do you want to do in terms of preparation? I said, I'd love to get up there and feel out the sort of mentality of these people and the isolation that they deal with. And with that, sort of working on the farm and getting to know these animals. I mean, the great thing about Clio is she'd set up the camera and she's so accessible and she'll take a suggestion so quickly that, you know, at one point I was like, she loves a surprise. So picking up them 2 lambs and walking through camera, she didn't know I was going to do that. Or, you know, there'd be times when I'd run into the field and grab a sheep and bring it back up and say, you know, let's get this one in the shot. And by the end of it, I felt very, very sort of comfortable with them. I'd been clipping their tails and castrating the lambs for 2 weeks and dealing with their foot rot and getting used to how they are and
dipping them
and all of that. So I think they are very stubborn. I can't imagine directing them. I mean, it's all right when someone says pick that one up, but
it's hard enough to direct a sheepdog, I would think. The sheep themselves.
I had a special relationship with one of them. She was orphaned. Her mother had died in the night, and it was my first job. I'd got onto the farm, and the farmer had said, you know, that one's gone through at night. And I said, right. He said, carry it up to the top of the hill for the knacker man. Knacker man comes and takes him. So I'm carrying this full-size ewe over my shoulders, and I'm thinking, you know, it's full dead animal on the first day, and there's this little one of the other lambs had gone, and there was a little one she was really dark grey in colour, and we called her Cloud, and she makes an appearance loads in the film because I could go up to her and she liked me, so you'd be able to pick her up and get her in the film. And bingo.
So after all those sheep, what's next for you?
Cars is next. So I'm going to do a Scottish film, which is BFI again and BBC Films and Creative Scotland. So I'm going to go up, and it's another part which is sort of, you know, based around the fragility of someone's where they are in their mind, and it's kind of it's a film called Born to Run, and it's based on a fella who's reviewing his life. He's at a point in his life where he's reviewing his life. His son's making the same mistakes that he made, which is kind of, you know, the mistakes that you make of having children young, no money, suddenly find yourself in prison by the town you were born in, and he takes his son's car, steals his son's car for a nostalgic night of reminiscence of what was, rather than the bleakness of what is.
So when can we expect to see that, do you think?
Well, we turn over, I think, 12th of March, so I expect this time next year.
Good luck with that.
Thanks
Mark
very
Stanley,
much.
Thank you very much.
No,
indeed.
thank you. Appreciate it.